So it looks like for the upcoming iPhone 12, Apple is not going to be including a charger in the box. Keep in mind, these are speculations and rumors at this point, but most of the time when people are talking about these rumors and speculations, most of the time this stuff may actually be real just due to the fact that how close we are to the launch of the iPhone 12. And then, of course, you do have to keep in mind this is Apple we're talking about. And Apple, when it comes to the technology space, they are known to do some pretty big controversial moves, like, for instance, remove the headphone jack, remove the CD-ROM drive from their Macs, remove most of the ports on their MacBooks as well. So you can see if you look at Apple's past, Apple has had a past of doing some pretty big outrageous moves in the tech space, and this would be no different. And of course, Apple is going to have a lot of claims if they do actually remove the charger from the box. Now, when it comes to these claims specifically, we don't really know if they're going to would be removing just a charging brick from the box, or if they would be removing the cable from the box, like the lightning port, because apparently everyone's saying that this year's iPhone is still going to be a lightning iPhone using Apple's own proprietary charging port still, the lightning port. It's not going to be that push to that USB Type-C future that everybody wants, and it's certainly not going to be a portless iPhone this year, unfortunately. And I can see why Apple would want to do this on a number of different levels. First of all, if you look at what these chargers do to the environment, of course, a lot of people actually throw these chargers away or don't end up using these chargers. So, of course, what is Apple going to do? Apple, of course, is going to claim that their charging bricks do pose hazards to the environment. Of course, they're not eco-friendly, so of course Apple is actually going to claim that. And on top of that, Apple's probably just going to tell everybody, hey, listen, most of you guys already have an iPhone anyway, so most likely if you're getting the brand new iPhone 12, you're most likely going to have a charger laying around from like an old Android device, or for instance maybe an old iPhone laying around. Either way, you're going to have an old charger laying around, so that's probably what they're going to claim. And of course, another reason why they would actually do this would be to cut down cost. I do know these bricks don't cost all that much to manufacture, but if they can remove it from the box altogether, it would save them in the cost of the iPhone. And of course, if they remove this from the box, they could potentially lower the iPhone's price by a couple of dollars. If they did remove this, they may do that, but knowing Apple, they may not even lower the price of the iPhone. If they remove the charging brick from the box, they may keep the iPhone the exact same price. Now, is this actually a really weird thing that Apple would be removing the charger from the box? Actually, if you look at other companies in the tech space, other companies have done this in the past by not including a charger and actually making people buy a charger altogether. Like, for instance, you may not know this, but Nintendo in the past has actually not included a charger with one of their handheld game systems, the new 3DS XL. The new 3DS XL actually did not include a charger in the box. Basically, what Nintendo said was most likely you already have an older charger laying around from like an older 3DS or a DSi that used the same plug. So that's pretty much what Nintendo has said, and Nintendo just said, well, if you want a charger, you can buy a charger extra. But if you think about it, it does actually eat into the cost of the iPhone for the consumer, because if you were to add up the iPhone 12, depending on which model you buy, plus the charger that you might have to buy separately if you didn't previously own an iPhone or own a smartphone or whatever the case may be, you could be looking at an additional cost. And sometimes these chargers cost $15 to $20, and especially if you buy one officially from Apple, I think it's around $30. Correct me if I'm wrong. So you can see it's still going to be an extra fee for you. Let's actually hope this rumor and this speculation is not real. But the only thing that scares me is, first of all, it is Apple, and like I said, time and time again, Apple is known to do some controversial moves in the tech space. And then on top of that, we are only months away from the new iPhone being released. And since we're so close to the new iPhone being released, I almost want to say this might actually be real. And unfortunately, they might not include a charger in the box. The one thing that does scare me, though, anytime Apple does something big like this, it always ricochets to all the other tech companies in the industry. Like, for instance, what happened when Apple removed the headphone jack? Everybody was laughing at Apple for removing the headphone jack, and a lot of those big companies like Samsung and a lot of Android smartphone makers were like, no, let's keep the headphone jack, so we still have something on there to compete with Apple and make fun of Apple. But then years later, we're looking in 2020, and almost every single flagship smartphone, whether it's Apple or from an Android smartphone maker, doesn't have a headphone jack. And this does scare me, because if Apple doesn't put a charger in the box, most likely other companies will follow suit, will follow Apple's footsteps, and they will be like, yep, we have to do this for the environment, and it just makes sense from a cost standpoint, because if we have to ship like a lot of phones out, if we can remove one component in the box, it's less we have to pay for, it's less we have to ship, we can make the box smaller. And I hope this is not true. And a lot of people will just tell you, oh yeah, it's just a charger that most likely you do have. But there are people out there, worst case scenario, that either never had a smartphone to begin with, or there are people out there that literally are coming from Android. And if you're coming from Android, you may actually need a charger. And it is always nice to have a real certified, like, first party charger from Apple in the box, because a lot of times if you don't include a charger in the box, think about it this way, a lot of people will be like, well, why would I buy a charger from Apple when I can get one from a third party manufacturer, or from a cheap Chinese manufacturer that makes cheap knockoff like wall adapters? Because then that won't be too good for your iPhone. You may get less than ideal charging speeds. It may cause a risk when it actually comes to charging. It may damage your iPhone. So I hope they just include it in the box for a lot of different reasons. It just really does make sense. But this one is just a really big claim, and let's just hope this is not big at all. The next one I have on my list is actually about an upcoming update for a PS4 game. Now, this PS4 game didn't actually sell all too well, and not many people actually talk about this game. I think this is a game that came out in 2020. It came out at the beginning of 2020, early 2020, and this game is Dreams. And you're probably unfamiliar with Dreams. You may know about Dreams, but basically, if you've never heard about Dreams, Dreams is a PS4 exclusive. And the thing is about Dreams is a game where you actually make your own game. Yes, so it is a game, but again, it's not a game, if that makes sense, because think about it this way, Dreams is pretty much an RPG Maker. If you ever played something like RPG Maker or Mario Maker kind of deal, where you make your own games. But the thing that makes Dreams such an amazing game is the fact that Dreams is a game where you can literally make any type of game you want. You want to make a platformer? Check. You want to make a puzzle game? Check. You want to make a sports games? Check. You can pretty much make any game your heart desires, with limitations, of course. We're not talking about big budget AAA games or even indie style games. A lot of these games are just going to be like concept type games where you play these games for a little while. They're okay. They're just dream games, but even so, to make a game that you want to make is still pretty impressive. And this game is still an amazing game. It actually still kind of blows my mind that Sony, of all companies, really doesn't want to market this game. You would think this would be a game that they would want to market for the PlayStation brands. That is a PlayStation exclusive, and it is a fairly sought after, it is a fairly good game, and it is a fun game to play, trying out everybody's dream creations. And honestly, I think this is a good game. I've seen people play this game, and overall this game looks like a fantastic game. Just know what you're getting into when we're talking about Dreams, since Dreams is a game that you got to keep your expectations in check when you actually play this game. But there is some information about an upcoming update for this game, and this big update coming out for Dreams is actually going to add VR support to Dreams. And I think this is where things get super interesting for Dreams, because I really do think that once they add this PSVR update to Dreams, it's really going to be a big game changer. I thought this game was already a game worth checking out to begin with, because if you look at the games industry, there's really nothing like this where you can make your dreams come to reality, and this is pretty much what this game is. And by adding this VR function to this game, your mind is pretty much going to be blown, because there's going to be so many crazy concepts when it comes to VR. And I really do personally think, when we're talking about this Dreams VR update, I really do think when this comes out, it's going to be a big game changer, not only for the Dreams community, but also for people looking to get into VR. And if you really want to experience what VR has to offer, it's going to be Dreams, because let's face it, a lot of people who are creating games for Dreams are going to implement VR, and there's going to be some pretty wicked VR experiences made for VR, and games that work well in VR. And if you want to experience VR again, this is going to be the best way to experience VR. Now, this update is not officially out yet. This update is going to be coming out later later this month. It's actually going to be coming out on July 22nd, so you are going to have a little bit of time. If you want to get this update in your hands, you will have to wait for this, but it is pretty crazy that this game is getting a brand new PlayStation VR update July 22nd. I was going to say this game is already worth it if you own a PlayStation and you just want to try different games at random and you want to experience what people have to create. But now this game's even going to be much more worth it just due to the fact that this update is coming out for Dreams, and it looks like it's going to be a very good update when this update actually comes out for Dreams. Now the next one for today's video is actually going to be about Nintendo, because Nintendo actually finally released a statement regarding Joy-Con drift on the Nintendo Switch, but unfortunately it's not really a good statement, to be honest. Let's go ahead and look at what Nintendo said about the Joy-Con drift on the Nintendo Switch. So if you go over here and look at the articles about Nintendo makes apology for Joy-Con drift issues, they basically says Nintendo president pretty much just said we apologize for any inconvenience caused to our customers regarding Joy-Con. And yeah, that's pretty light statement right there. It's nothing too crazy, and it kind of sucks that they even went out of their way to actually say this statement. Honestly, they shouldn't even came out and said this, because this really does nothing to us, and they're pretty much just still brushing this under a rug pretty much, because this thing a lot of people get, and most likely if you do get a brand new Nintendo Switch, I know this from experience, most likely you're gonna get Joy-Con drift, since Joy-Con drift is just too big, and over time your Joy-Cons just get it no matter what. I know I've personally known people in my real life who've had 7 or 8 Joy-Cons, pairs of Joy-Cons, just to get rid of the Joy-Con drift, and that's really unfortunate. And especially if you're on the Nintendo Switch Lite, you guys know the situation with the Nintendo Switch Lite. The Switch Lite is a piece of hardware where you can't actually change out the analog sticks or the Joy-Con, quote unquote. So that means once you get Joy-Con drift on your Nintendo Switch Lite, you're pretty much out of luck, and your whole system is out of function until you send it back to Nintendo, which can be kind of frustrating and can be kind of annoying altogether when you have to send a brand new or a older Nintendo Switch Lite back to Nintendo just to try to get it fixed. And apparently, if you do somehow get your Nintendo Switch fixed from Nintendo, the Joy-Con drift, apparently there is no permanent solution to get your Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons fixed. Apparently it can come back no matter what, which is kind of unfortunate. So it's kind of like, why even get this repaired from Nintendo? I know way back, I think in July of last year, Nintendo did do a program where you could send your Nintendo Switch in or your Joy-Cons into Nintendo, and they would kind of fix your Joy-Cons at no cost. But unfortunately there was no like I said, no permanent solution for fixing the Joy-Cons. And to make things worse, apparently of course, Nintendo didn't actually do a massive recall, which personally for me, I really do think this is one situation where not everybody is experiencing it, to be honest, but there's enough people out there where I really do think Nintendo should do something about this. They should either compensate us or give us new Joy-Cons or something like that. But I guess, again, they already did kind of compensate us, since they let a lot of people send their Joy-Cons in last year to get them fixed for free. But honestly, that's not good enough, since this whole issue is still something that a lot of people talk about. Why do you think a lot of different companies out there in the world are actually suing Nintendo for damages due to the Joy-Con, which I really do think needs to happen, and we do need to get some kind of lawsuit going, and they do need to do some kind of recall where they just admit that the Joy-Cons are defective, and we should be able to all get new Joy-Cons, or maybe get some money back in the future, like some companies where when they file these lawsuits, if they do win these lawsuits, we deserve some money back, because who wants to play a Nintendo Switch when the main way to play the Switch, of course, is the Joy-Con, and you do need controllers. And what's the point of getting a brand new Nintendo Switch or any Switch in that regards when it has Joy-Con drift? It ruins your experience. And if Nintendo really does care about the customer and the customer quality as well, they should really do something about this Joy-Con issue, because this Joy-Con issue is pretty much out of control, and it's kind of a shame. Even after all this time, they're still pretty much just brushing this under the rug. They really need to go back to the factory and do something about these Joy-Cons. They really need to be forced to update the Joy-Cons and fix it and things like this, because this is pretty much unacceptable from a company like Nintendo. And it's pretty much really bizarre too that this is really the first generation of Nintendo consoles, at least in my eyes and a lot of other people's eyes, that really did have a lot of problems when it actually comes to quality control on their actual system. There's really no other Nintendo system to date that really has as many problems as the Nintendo Switch. We had the whole Joy-Con issue, which I'm currently talking about right now. We had a lot of cracking Nintendo Switches. We had some overheating Nintendo Switches. Overall, the Nintendo Switch has a lot of quality controls compared to other Nintendo systems in the past, so it's kind of bizarre that they're just brushing a lot of these problems under the rug with the Nintendo Switch. And it's kind of a shame too, because usually Nintendo is a company that has really good quality control, really stands by their products, but with the Nintendo Switch, it's just really weird how they're brushing a lot of these problems under the rug, and you don't really have confidence buying a brand new Nintendo Switch, or any type of Nintendo Switch at that matter, just due to the fact that Nintendo has a lot of problems, and they don't want to admit their problems with the Nintendo Switch. They kind of just want to get the Nintendo Switch out the door, and as long as it's functioning and as long as you can play it, they don't really care about a lot of this stuff. And it is a shame, and there needs to be something needs to be done about all these issues that the Nintendo Switch is currently suffering. And yeah, that pretty much wraps up today's episode. Anyway, guys, this is Wayne from My Tech News, signing out.